So our next question comes in from Sean, and Sean says, "This is a follow-up to your discussion in episode 1772 when you talked about a group trying to form up in an unclaimed island between Serbia and Croatia. Croatia. Just to be clear, that island is not like an island in the middle of the water. It's an island as it's a piece of land between two nations that nobody really wants to claim. It's about 7 kilometers squared, I believe. He says, given how money is so influential, one, how do you believe that liberty minded people could use their investments to influence a smaller country? For instance, rewarding Serbia for recognizing the group. Two, what do you think of a website that researched and published such information as to who to invest with and why? Not for financial benefit, but for societal benefit. Three, how difficult to organize and influential would an investment fund be for such an activity? Background, I know little about such investments, but would like to help, and I'm trying to for a question hat trick. By the way, such a similar idea could help Free State, New Hampshire. Sean and Tally. I guess that's Tallahassee. So here's my way of looking at this. It's not so much like you create a mutual fund for Libertas or whatever they're calling this place. Libertas was the virtual nation I came up with. I can't remember the name of this place exactly, but it's a Liberty. It's something Liberty, and it's this little tiny piece of land that's been left between Serbia and Croatia. And this gentleman and some backers have basically claimed it, even though they physically aren't in it yet. And they plan on possibly this summer bringing in like 5 to 10,000 people and forcibly taking over this vacant piece of land, and then saying basically there's no way the police are going to move 10,000 people out of there, and then setting up and going. So would it make sense then for people to gather together capital and say to a nation like Serbia, hey, if you guys, or Croatia, hey, if you guys diplomatically recognize this and let this happen, there's something in it for you. I don't know. When you're trying to influence a nation, it's kind of above the pay grade of people at our level in general. You're talking about billionaires, and then money influencing nations tends to lead to bad things, doesn't it? So I'm not so sure we would go that way. What do you think of a website that researched and published such information as to who to invest with and why, not for financial benefit, but for societal benefit? Well, I think that is an interesting idea, but I think that's an idea really more and more moving toward the concept of cryptocurrencies and virtual nations, and I think that's really the way that needs to be taken. That can't be done with dollars or yen or pound sterling or euros, because that's the enemy's means of control. So as long as you're doing business in their money, you're doing business on their terms, and you're subject to their manipulations. So I think the derivatives of Bitcoin and the ability to create currencies that are for specific things, and the ability to use blockchain-like technology or blockchain technology itself for voting rights, for shareholder rights, for things like that, are doing far more and will do far more to create freedom than money. But having a website that basically went with some sort of trust indicator that individuals, that nations, that companies had certain trust and were supporters of liberty might be a good idea. How difficult to organize and influential would an investment fund need to be for such an activity? It'd be very, very difficult, because you're asking people to put up a lot of money for it to be useful. And then who's in control of it? How's it going to work? Who gets to decide? What do you get? I mean, I know you said it's for society's benefit, but if you don't get the benefits you're looking for society, then you didn't get the benefits you invested for. So how do we work all this out to where we get to a situation that actually would function? So instead of answering your question directly, I want to look at it more from a standpoint of, well, what could we do to have a nation like this become successful again? So what could this nation, this little island in between Serbia and Croatia, do to become successful? Well, I think they're already talking about a strategic alliance with something called bitnation, bitnation.co, bitnation.co. And BitNation is laying the groundwork for virtual nations so that you can have conflict resolution, so that you can have education, so that you can have contracts. So you can take all these things that governments normally do and put them into a format where they're actually controlled by the parties that are involved. And we can then develop a trust rated system so that you can trust someone because they've done business with hundreds of other people and always kept their word. And you know that a conflict resolution service works well because it has good ratings by people that won and lost in the conflict. In fact, conflict resolution's done right when the parties have the conflict resolved and both people feel like, well, I got something decent out of that. That was a good experience, and I understand now why this person had a conflict with me in the first place, and we did the best we could, and they both feel like they got satisfaction. That's actually conflict. That's not what happens in a court of law. So I think that the website should actually be enabling that type of thing, regardless of where you're geographically located. And that's the virtual nation concept in a nutshell. However, if these folks actually pull off claiming this piece of ground and are actually able, through things like the United Nations, to gain political recognition as an actual nation, it lends them a credibility that they would not normally have, and it lends any, it's like Estonia's e-citizenship is, I think, the way they would go. And my thought is what they should do is they should actually sell citizenship, and they should develop this cloud nation with a home base, a physical home base, and actually issue passports so that you have kind of the best of both worlds. You have a citizenship of a sovereign nation. Whether you live there or not doesn't matter. They can decide what it takes to become a citizen of their nation. They can decide how often you actually have to step foot there, and that answer could be you don't ever have to step foot there. In fact, it would be really smart for them to take that approach. And I think what would happen is there'd be so many people that would want to become citizens if you made the process easy, that money would pour in. And then you take that group of people and you get them doing business with each other through your nation. And you shelter them from other nations in those business activities. You say these are our citizens doing our business our way, and no, you don't get to see what they're doing. It's none of your business. And you charge fees for different services. Now, these aren't taxes, because this place is not supposed to have taxes, but they're voluntary services that the nation could offer. And of course, they could be competed with. This makes sense. This is not a perfect stateless society, but it is pushing the interactive edge with the state further and further away from the state's control. I think it's an interesting idea. That's the approach I would take. And I'll include links in the show notes and the video notes, because this one's on video as well, where you can learn more about this nation. Again, Liberland, that's what it's called. It just came to me. This nation, Liberland, and their plans for basically as they're phrasing it, a physical hostile takeover. And I'll see if I can look up some stuff for you too on the strategic alliance between BitNation and Liberland, because I think that really makes things more exciting. So I believe that the way forward for virtual nations, voluntarist nations, is to build collective wealth, to build purchasing power, to build production power, to build something that other people want something from. They want a piece of it, a part of it. And actually then you can actually form business relationships with other nations as well, other actual physical nations. And if it leads humanity toward greater freedom, then I'm all for it. Will it work? I don't know. Some version thereof will. That's what I'm confident of. Like any technology, you often have multiple iterations of it, and some of them always do fail, and some of them generally succeed. So with that, let's take another one.